One of my favorite stories in the world of extraterrestrial contact is that of Val Thor, after whom the book Stranger at the Pentagon was written. His story was brought out by a man named Frank Stranges. Since my original fascination years ago, I've come into contact with people who are also in contact with Frank, including Hollywood film director Craig Campobasso, who is now producing the film about Val Thor, Stranger at the Pentagon. I'm so happy to have you here. This is just the best.
I'm really happy to be here to see you, Regina. Thank you for having me.
Since I first came in contact with that book years and years ago, I thought, it felt real to me, but you always have to wonder, is this someone's imagination?
Sure. I read it in the 80s myself, and I thought the same thing. And, but when I actually looked at the photographs that were taken of Valiant Thor and Vice Commander Dawn and Jill, who is a wife of another Vice Commander named Zan, I later found out from Dr. Frank, the photographs just resonated with me.
They did with me as well.
They just felt genuine, and they were also taken by a retired Air Force photographer who was also a ufologist.
And you can see in some of the photos that the group around them is kind of looking at them like, who are these guys?
They actually are, and those photographs were taken on the Howard Menger's farm, who was also a contactee way back in the day. And Dr. Frank actually connected me to Howard and his wife, and I spoke to his wife, Connie, also about that day, and she said every time they had UFO lectures, there were always visitors present. She called them the visitors, and she said sometimes they would say who they were and sometimes they wouldn't, but this particular time they didn't.
And what's interesting about this is during that era, when we're looking back at the 50s in particular, and even into the 60s, the stories of alien contact had to do with people who were humanoid.
Right.
Usually attractive, usually nicely dressed.
Right.
Big shift from what John Mack started dealing with in the 90s and into the 2000s, which is this frightening gray abduction scenario, which is what started taking over the scene when people start thinking of the word alien contact.
Yes.
And so this was more in the sweet days when messages of importance were being delivered in a gentlemanly fashion.
Yes. And that there were, in these early days, that there were many people who were having contacts from beings all over the place. I've gone and I've studied, especially at the Integratron back in the days when George Van Tassel had his UFO space conventions, where anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 people would go and camp out in the desert. Dr. Frank Stranges used to host those things in the 50s and 60s
5 to 10,000?
5 to 10. I've seen photographs,
Wow, and the congresses of today are lucky to get 200 or 300 people to show up.
And evidently back in those days, these beings from other places were more accessible because it was new to them, and they were coming because of the atomics that started happening in the 40s and the danger it was posing to the rest of the universe, and all those kinds of things. But it was fascinating. So I really, if people still think the story might be a little crazy, what I say is keep an open mind and research George Van Tassel and all of these people from that era, to see it, the story is not going to get proved unless Valiant Thor walks in here, himself.
Well, these are more dangerous times to walk in.
But it's still, I really wanted to make the film because I think it's a wonderful, fascinating story.
Absolutely. Okay, so you say that Val Thor was a created being. What does that mean? Well,
a created being is someone that doesn't have a belly button. So they're actually what we would call an angel in human form.
Did he ever explain how that happens? How they're able to come into and create any kind of physical form and density?
And density, we know from a lot of previous teachings and things that I've read, is that created beings can be created through the Godhead, through or the universal head, however you want to look at it, is that they can create things at will. So You know,
not a challenge for someone who understands the creative process.
Exactly.
And there are human beings who can do this as well.
Absolutely.
We have to understand
Absolutely.
to create something like
That's
Val Thor
right.
actually is our birthright. We just
That's
haven't
right.
remembered our way
That's
back
right.
to it yet.
That's right.
Okay, so he arrives at the Pentagon. We're going to take a look at our very first clip
Right.
from the film, okay?
Yes.
And set this up for us a little bit, because we want to know first of all, I should ask you, why did he come here?
Well, he actually came with a divine design, which was to help eliminate sickness, disease, and poverty. And it was a design from the Unification Council, of which he was a part of which there are 12 members. And it was for Eisenhower to implement throughout the United States, and then once that proved successful, throughout the world. So on that first meeting, when they met at the White House on...
We're going to see that clip in a little bit,
We're going to see that clip in a little bit. But the but his main purpose was coming just for that, and he was put on VIP status by Eisenhower for 3 years, where they discussed how they could do this and how it could work and all of that. But of course, there were major conflicts with all the other areas and the Joint Chiefs and the CIA.
We had that warning when Eisenhower left office: beware of the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
Val Thor must have figured prominently in that.
Yeah. Right.
So there was a reason Val Thor chose to connect with Eisenhower specifically.
Yes, yeah.
Before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
let's take a look at the clip where Val Thor arrives.
All right, so this clip is where his craft Victor 1, which is 300 feet in diameter, by the way, holds up to 200 people, is arriving on Earth for the first time and is coming in for a landing.
Beautifully done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That was really beautifully done. And you said that a lot of this is CG, of course.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
It's
computer-generated graphics.
Exactly. Images.
Yeah, really well done. Okay, so let's talk about, once Val Thor arrived here, what was his original experience like? How was he first greeted? And then what was his experience and the reception at the Pentagon like?
Well, he was met by, when his craft landed, the first two on the scene were two police officers, and they actually had their guns drawn. And when he walked off the craft, when they looked upon him, they felt the energy of this man, and they just immediately just dropped their arms and walked up to him, and they actually had a conversation. He said he wanted to see the president. They radioed ahead.
You said, hey, we'll give you an escort.
And you have to remember, this is on a Saturday morning. This was not, he didn't come during the week. Actually that would have caused havoc if you think about it. So it was March 16th, 1957, and it was 8 a.m. in the morning. So, the city was awake, but not at full function. So they rushed him to the Pentagon. He met with the Secretary of Defense, the Undersecretary of Defense. He met with some other military officials. They were all being called in. Eisenhower was being called in. Nixon, everybody was then going. They all met with him at the White House in the Oval Office. And that's where the first meeting took place. And Eisenhower's first words were, "I have a good feeling towards you, sir. Please, what is your name?"
Should we take a look at that clip
now?
Let's do clip number 2, and then we'll get deeper into the conversation.
Sure.
Where Valiant Thor meets the president.
Of course, we've suspended all rules of protocol. I have a good feeling towards you. I'm President Dwight Eisenhower. Please, sir, what is your name?
Commander Valiant Thor.
have there been any confirming documents, for example, that were ever discovered by Eisenhower or Nixon or anyone else that was involved military regarding contact with this stranger at the Pentagon, or was this very deeply hidden?
Well, I've never come across any documents. I myself asked Dr. Frank. He didn't know of any documents. The only thing that is recorded is Harley Byrd, who was Admiral Richard E. Byrd's nephew, was a part of Project Blue Book at that time.
Yes.
And actually, in the foreword to the book, he confirms the entire story, his arrival, his meeting with the president, and him staying there at the Pentagon for 3 years. So he himself did confirm it.
Excellent. And explain Project Blue Book for our viewers who aren't familiar with these terms.
Well, back in the 50s, they created an organization to look into UFO sightings and, you know, people reporting and all that. So they would go out and they would investigate and see if things were correct, or, you know, if people actually really saw something, or, you know, that kind of thing. So they would log things and catalog.
And this was a governmental.
This was,
study.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Just to set that straight.
Yes.
And then, of course, I think in the 90s they said, well, couldn't find anything. Fables.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, there were only thousands and thousands of documented cases before they threw it out the window.
Sure.
Okay, so when did Frank Stranges come into the picture and meet with Valiant Thor?
He was doing a lecture, a 2-week lecture in Washington, D.C. in December of 1959. And he actually was friends with August Roberts, who took the photographs of Valiant Thor and his crew members earlier at the Menger farm. And he had gone to Dr. Frank with the photographs and said, these people are not from here. That man right there had no fingerprints, no palm prints. And when he looked at me, it was like he was going deep into my soul, and you just felt different when you were around him.
And this has been from many people have said the same thing.
Yes, they've all said the same thing, even down to the thing that his pheromones are even what you would call something that changes your senses and brings you into that God sort of centered place. And one of these nights at the lecture, what he did was a woman came up to him when he was signing books. He had a book then called Saucerama, which was all about flying saucers and photographs and stories. And a woman came up to him, her name was Nancy Warren, changed, of course, for the book. And she put her Pentagon badge underneath his face. And he looked at her and she pointed to the picture and she said, he wants to meet you. And she said, I will pick you up at your hotel tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And so those arrangements were made. She took him to the Pentagon. She took him in where, they went through 2 guard gates. He didn't have a badge. I mean, this is like this great story that, I forget what Dr. Frank called it. It's like trans imagery.
Okay.
Right? So they're seeing something that's not there. So, he would open his coat, boom, there's a badge, but there's no badge. And that's how he actually got, through the 2 guard gates.
If you enjoyed this, make sure to watch the next video on AwakenZone. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, but you won't want to miss what's coming next.